All right, we do a couple. That's all right. It's all right. No, but not from Issakoff. Anybody else?
I want to ask you about double standards. You brought 7, as you said, weak cases against what tended to be mid-level to lower level, a line FBI agent, a level bureaucrat. Then when it gets to somebody high level, like a David Petraeus, who acknowledges disclosing the most sensitive information in government war plans, the names of informants that somebody wasn't on, or the Stuxnet investigation where somebody leaks information. We don't see the actual criminal felony charges that you brought in other cases because it gets messy, because they can hire high-powered law firms that can come in and make all sorts of cases, threaten to scorch their litigation, talk about the individual and what a great human being he's been, and a patriot. And so as you look back on that, and having lived through those high-level cases, does that make you think twice about those prosecutions you did bring on lower-level people when you punted, when you had opportunities to bring felony cases against higher level?
Well, you've raised two where I guess you'd say we punted. One has not been punted, and the other, there were factors that made the resolution of the case appropriate that did not exist in the other matters. And it wasn't a function of high-priced lawyers. It wasn't a function of the level of the person who was involved. There were some unique things that existed in that case that would have made the prosecution at the felony level and a conviction at the felony level very, very, very problematic. Some unique things that happened there. And then with regard to the other one, that's still to be determined.
Somebody, the takeaway for most people can be, you go after these that's to somebody high level. There's another story.
You're too cynical, Issakoff. No, I mean, I understand. I'm kidding aside. I mean, I get that. On the other hand, that's something that you almost have to take in government. You got to take that because you can't talk about what it was that ultimately made you decide to take a plea at a misdemeanor level as opposed to going after a felony prosecution or even taking a felony plea. Why that was appropriate. I mean, I can't share that with you. Even now, it's almost like you have to take it on faith. But I mean, and so I understand how that does breed that level of cynicism because not the easy, but in some ways the thing that seems to distinguish the case from other resolutions is the nature of the person, the position of the person, the lawyering done for or on behalf of the person. But I can honestly tell you that was not the reason why that case was resolved in the way that it was. A felony, that would have been hard. Would have been, beyond hard.
Can I ask you a quick transparency question? You seem pretty proud of your role in initiating the reinvestigation of the interrogations of war on terror prisoners and the process of the 101 cases or incidents where people supposedly abused prisoners. Ultimately, there were no prosecutions. How do you feel about where we are on the transparency of that process? When that was over, you put out like a 3-paragraph statement saying, considering all the factors, it's sort of, with all due respect, boilerplate. We decided not to proceed with this.
Yeah.
Now we have a 600-page report that's been published by the Senate about the overall interrogation system program, a 6,000-page report that's behind that maybe we'll see someday. When should we have more transparency about how that process worked, all the work that was done in the Justice Department, and why you ultimately came to the conclusion that you couldn't proceed in any of those?
Yeah, I mean, right? Let's say this Eric Holder, the non-government official. I'd love to be able to. I was talking about somebody about that before we came in. I'd like to be able to just throw on the table, all the work that was done by John Durham, the special prosecutor who looked into this, the special investigator, whatever his title was, and let people see, how seriously we took the responsibility that we had to figure out whether or not criminal charges could be brought, and how proud, of the work that he did. It was, in essence, a reinvestigation. Caused a great deal of dissension within the department, but I thought it was the appropriate thing to do. If there were a way in which we could just, as I said, put it on the table and let people look at it in the same way that you get a chance to look at that Senate report, I think that would be a good thing. On the other hand, there is this whole notion of grand jury secrecy, and I understand that, and there is a value in that. But I actually think that with regard to this particular set of facts, that the need for grand jury secrecy is actually outweighed by the need for the nation to know that its leaders took this seriously, that we looked at conduct that's inconsistent with who we say we are as a people, and to explain why, as offended as we were, even given the factual findings that we were able to make, we were simply unable to make the cases. People need to know that. And I would hope, as I was saying before, that at some point, I don't know, 10, 15, 20, 30, whatever the amount of time is, that at some point, even now it's hard to do that, to get past the grand jury secrecy thing with the passage of, I think, pretty enormous amounts of time. But the American people need to see what it is that was done by very capable, thorough people at the department. So I am proud of what it is that they did, and I wish we could explain why we didn't get to a result that, in my gut, I think where we should have been. We simply couldn't do it, though.
Missing something. Have some information. Talking and discussing earlier about the Manhattan Project. What would be the difference with this particular case that we're discussing, say, against something like New York Times versus the United States? Still very high level, international security issues. So what was the difference in that compared to what, was going on in this case?
It's a fact. These are fact-based kinds of things. The revelation of the Manhattan Project while the Germans were still in the process of trying to get, heavy water or something at Peenemünde. Whatever. The possibility that would somehow give them the capacity to do that which they might not have had the ability to do. It might have changed the war. I don't know.
But it didn't necessarily change a lot from what they were actually reporting on in New York versus the United States. It was the Pentagon Papers under the Nixon.
Yeah, and as I said, these are fact-specific kinds of determinations. And again, what I'm saying is that it's not for the government, to decide. Although, it is for you all to decide. I'm saying that you all need to think about whether or not, because you have the ability to make a story, reveal information, whether that is something that is appropriately done. Now, you can certainly, interact with government to get the perspective of the government. But in some ways, I think, you're comparing apples and oranges. It just really depends on the facts of the case, which isn't to say that, the revelation of, there's some good arguments, I guess, that could have been made on behalf of the government in connection with, the Pentagon Papers. And yet, from my perspective, the lefty I was then thought that, that it was right, that those things should have been revealed. And I'd like to think that, lefty, but the older, more mature, gray-haired person that I am now would still think that was right. If there were a concomitant, similar set of facts now, that I'd come out the same way, I think I probably would. I hope that I would. But again, I contrast that, for instance, with the operational detail that was revealed and hindered our ability to get at, well, I mean, everybody knows, this guy is Siri, you know, in the AP case. That, I think, that is one where I would have, with all respect, I think I might have held back on, you know.
You know, you say that a reporter wouldn't go to jail. What makes someone a reporter and somebody
That was another one of the things that really struck me, I think struck all of us when we had those meetings, that whole determination of who's a reporter, you know. Probably a lot more easy to define 20 years ago than it is now. Who is a reporter? Who's entitled to all of these sensitivities that we have? And that's something that it was interesting. There was not unanimity. There were a wide range of views from people in the media, in the press, who interacted with us, and that was another one of the things that I remember. I wouldn't say we kind of struck us on the government side, and so that's an evolving thing, you know. I'm not sure how you define who a reporter is. I'm not sure. I don't know what the answer to that one is. What about him? What?
about doing assignments?
I'd have to think about that one. I'm not sure.
Another question? Yes, sir.
How did you handle your personal and official Were you surprised to hear the Secretary of State had a private server?
I had one, and no, I was just kidding. My chief of staff would not have allowed me to have a personal server. Yeah, I was surprised. I mean, I think she's right that was a mistake to have. I mean, the only thing I did was that you didn't have Eric Holder at doj.gov or whatever that would have been I had different names. My two grandfathers' first name, I guess, and then his last name, then the first and last name of the Temptations, Temptations lead singers, and the last one was Lou Alcindor.
I see people furiously taking notes out there.
And the last one was Lou Alcindor, which my lovely chief of staff, and I'm going to embarrass her now. So I said, we'll change it to Lou Alcindor at usdoj.gov or something. And she had to go and Google who Lou Alcindor is. For those of you who don't know, that's Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Yes.
Look how red she is. But that's all I did, just to kind of, so that, you know, we stop the American people from being able to communicate with the Attorney General on every damn issue that they wanted to send to me. You know.
When you took office, there was a crying need for accountability regarding the massive financial fraud that led to it. But you largely whiffed on that, and now here you are back and coming in burling in a comfortable corner office with clients who are exactly the kind of people you should have been putting in jail. Is there any, do you feel like that recognizes a conflict there? That there's a perception that maybe you didn't do as much as you should have because you knew where you were going to end up?
Well, there's a premise to your question that, frankly, is not factually based. The notion that, the implication of your question is that we whiffed, or I think that's the term you used, that there was a determination made not to go after responsible individuals. To do that would mean that people like Preet Bharara, Loretta Lynch, U.S. attorney out in Colorado, North Carolina, I'm trying to think all the places out in San Francisco, would have had to have made a determination for whatever reason that, we'll go after these corporate entities, but we're not going to go after individuals. That's not the reality. The reality is that we were trying to make cases against individuals. It got to the point where I was having meetings every 10, I guess, to 14 days in my conference room to talk about particular institutions and where we stood with regard to the potential for bringing cases against individuals. It's something we tried to do. Simply unable to do it under the existing statutes that we had, and given the ways in which the decision-making occurred at those institutions. So do I feel like there's a tension? No, I did my job when I was in the Justice Department, working with my colleagues to do what we could to enforce the law and bring cases where they could be made. It's an easy thing for people who are not a part of the process and not conversant with all the facts to, ask questions. It pisses me off, on the other hand, when people who are not conversant with the facts and perhaps have never been prosecutors to somehow say that I did something in a way that was inconsistent with my oath, or that I'm not a person of integrity for not having done something that, the less well-informed think should have occurred. Yeah, if we had had the ability to bring cases against individuals, we would have brought them. There is absolutely no question about that. I'm proud to be back at this firm. It's a great firm. I'm proud of the work that I did at the Justice Department. I don't think there is a tension or an inconsistency in what I did there and what I will do, what I'll do here.
Get a room full of reporters and make it a press conference.